Never before has there been so many requests for a review on my channel before. The biggest series request from you guys before this was to review Prehistoric Emergence, but the moment Weird Birds Part 3 dropped, you guys, you had to let me know. Discord is full with members asking. Go join the Discord, by the way. We have fun over there. And the comments on my YouTube videos were just you guys asking for this. So here it is, Weird Birds Part 3 from Arkasukas, who honestly does an amazing job of storytelling with props and I think some animation. Not too sure. Whatever it is, it's fire. So check their Twitter out. I'll leave it in the description. Also a special mention to this guy, Nate at Night, for narrating the entire story. If you want to watch the entire ARG without any interruptions, then I highly recommend this channel for the amazing narration. But this is a very long video, folks, so without any further ado, let's get straight into it. It starts off with the main character of our story seeing these two silo scenes in Yellowstone National Park. Weirdly enough, they weren't that dirty or weary. Almost as though they didn't care about his presence, which is a bit weird for something that should fear us to death. One of the marsupials also has an injury which causes it to limp. It's also now where we get the name of our guy telling the story, Gene. I don't know about the rest of you, but anyone called Gene is either the nicest person you'll ever meet or a complete dick. In the excitement, Gene finds it hard to sleep because he literally saw 2 Tasmanian tigers. The experience has him so amazed that he considers leaving his banking job in the big city to stay here and see more wildlife. During the next day, the male silocene gets killed by a very large dromaeosaur of sorts. I can't really tell if it's them from the picture, but it looks very similar to the villains of every single Weird Birds panel, the Troodon. The attack itself was so brutal that Gene was just a bit shaken up from how violent it was. Our boy even tried calling the rangers, but no one picked up. If I had to guess, I'd say it's the wormholes doing like previous installments. However, the female Tasmanian tiger seemed to escape. But as one thing dies, another gets life. Oh, wait, nope, that was a lie. A slingbeak, which is a part from the future, has a wolf in its jaws. Yeah, these wormholes bring back stuff from the future and the past, by the way. The parrot is the size of a bear and eats both meat and plants, I guess, unless it killed the wolf for self-defense. Gene himself seems to know something like this can't be natural, so he thinks it's something supernatural or something. During the night, our female silocene shows up and it's just fine. She hangs around the car a bit but bolts with the slightest noise. But then she bolts again, and something big jumps on top of Gene's car. Yeah, that wasn't trying to just break in. Whatever that thing is, it's trying to unlock the door, which to me is more terrifying than something just trying to break in. Gene confirms that it's not a person and tries to snap a picture of it, but records some audio first. It's them. You know the creator of a story is good when they make a character or characters that raise so much hate in your body like nothing else. These things are animals, but it seems like they specifically live to torture humans. Not just to use us as food, but torture. The Chicago guy killing, child slaughtering, woman voice mimicking fiends from the previous stories are back. The Troodon. And the pictures Gene shows us just confirms this. They still have that punchable face like before. Gene also confirms that this was the thing that killed the male silocene earlier. However, he isn't worried because he has a vehicle that is apparently bulletproof. Damn bro, you raided the army or something? Anyway, when he tries to drive away, he can't because his bulletproof car is stuck. Should have invested in some tires too. But before anything else could happen, the Troodon gets yanked and dragged to the depths by a pair of big dog bear things.
Say that again?
If I had to assume, I'd say they were bear dogs. Or possibly Andrewsarchus, not sure. The crazy thing is that, again, not even the animals pay attention to the human. I mean, yes, sometimes other dinosaurs kill people, but these Troodons specifically actively seek us out. Anyway, in the morning it turns out that the bastard bird actually put a crowbar between the rims so the car couldn't go anywhere. Terrifying that a prehistoric animal knows to do that, to be honest. But on the bright side, Gene now has a crowbar, so our city boy, well, is he a city boy? I think he went to nature before. Anyway, he explores the landscape some more and comes across a dragon, or a wyvern. I do not know the difference, don't even know if it's either, but it's definitely not in the fossil records. It's massive, like with a 28-foot wingspan, and it's just zooming around in the sky. It's now that I'm realizing Gene is the over-the-top blogger type, but I don't really mind it. Bro really said we're experiencing the supernatural together. Gene also is a savage too. He saw some people and said he hopes they're okay from the dragon, but instead of throwing a rock or something and then pointing out the danger, he just shrugs it off and says, oh well, natural selection, hope they're okay. Hope he's not the type that undervalues human life. As it turns to night, the dragon bird thing starts calling all throughout the night, and it sounds like a mix of a pelican and a choking seagull. Weird dragons aside, the wormholes are back, and just as our previous storytellers, Gene notices that these things mess with technology. By changing the colors they appear on, and electronics straight up just glitch out. However, this time it was a big glass dome which disappeared later on, so I guess it returned to spawn. So Gene finally tries to catch a snooze, even though every sound sends him on high alert, which is valid since a big bird with teeth, claws, and can use tools to trap you is out there. In the morning, Gene decides to go and find some mushrooms, nuts, or whatever else he could eat. But since he's from the city, I don't know how well he'd do when it comes to picking out mushrooms that are safe. Regardless, he lucks out and continues his walk with the sensation that something's watching him. The more ground he covers, the more animal he sees and is amazed by. My boy really starts to have a deep appreciation for nature. Last time I had my nature arc was when she cut things off. Anywho, I don't know what these things are because it's a bit blurry, but apparently Gene says they are pink Indian ducks, so I'll take his word for it, I guess. Alright, apparently they are a real thing. Don't think they're extinct though, just critically endangered, but since they are from the other side of the world, they definitely could have come to the wormhole from the past. As Gene's getting some water from the river, he notices the female Salicine watching him, which again is very odd for an animal that's supposed to fear us with the passion granted what we did. Maybe she was a generation before all of that mess, I don't know. But that's not the surprising thing. It's the fact that the dragon thing is after a plane and apparently dive bombing the plane and is keeping up, but more than likely it got away. When they pushed off, Gene decides to go back foraging but froze when he heard this. Apparently it was some lizard that makes those Temu tiger sounds. It has a chamber on its head projecting the sound. Again, don't know what this is, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's something from the future again. None of that matters though, because my friend came back. Well, sorta. Mikey's species attacked Gene apparently, and Gene swatted it on the ground, which kinda hurt its wing. This originally got me mad, but then again, this Microraptor is behaving like a dick. Nothing like my glorious Mikey, who risked his life for a random human, and then his entire flock also risked their lives by bringing food to save some human they never met. Not like my perception matters though, because the female marsupial snatched the Microraptor and offed it. It just killed the dinosaur and left it alone, as though it was protecting Gene, but he shrugs it off as something else. After all, it isn't a Disney movie, right? Right? Back at the river, Gene meets a baby pterosaur or something, and when the adult pulls up, he wisely backs away. From the looks of it, I'd say it was a Rhamphorhynchus who just wanted to fish, honestly. Gotta say, they look a lot cuter than the purely reptilian renditions, even though they are reptiles. This interaction was also the one that made Gene put his foot down and decide to not go back to New York, which is a bit of a rash statement. I mean, I don't want to live in New York either because it's New York. But bear dogs, a man-eating Troodon, yeah, that's a no-no. He also saw a few more things like these other pterosaurs and some raptors. If I had to guess, I'd say they were Austroraptors. They came a bit close but easily backed off or stopped when Gene told them off. Why again is everything acting like an actual animal aside from the Troodon? Anyway, speaking of no-nos, the dragon is back at it again with the plane. Almost as though it's protecting its territory. It actually does get the plane and causes it to crash. A normal person would take this as their cue to leave, but not Gene. The adrenaline makes him want to stay even more and actually go towards the wreckage. But then he mocks us when we say it's a rash idea. He says that we are living behind the TV screen while he's living in reality. Then he tries to apologize by saying he didn't mean it with ill intent. I don't know, man, seems like you were. But hey, I don't care. The biggest scare I could experience where I live is a black bear or a random alligator pulling up. It seems like he honestly was having a crisis in New York though, and now can just let go and be himself. So he sets a goal to look for the wreck tomorrow and goes to bed with Toothless in the air making noise. In the morning, something somehow stranger than the dragon is in the sky. A ball of black lightning apparently formed, followed by a floating man in armor. At that point, I'd say the Earth's surface is doing too much and probably have a seizure from being too overstimulated, especially if I saw what Gene did, which was a dude walking down onto the plains as though he was descending from an invisible staircase from the sky. But then he vanished apparently, and Gene almost gets a mini heart attack when the Salicine pops up not too far from him. Every interaction she seems to get closer. I'd be honored to be honest. They gotta be the most petable marsupial, alive or dead. The Master Chief wannabe reappeared but was walking through the grass like a ghost and possibly could have seen Gene, who's clenching that crowbar like a diabetic does a vial of insulin. In Gene's travels, he somehow finds the pilot of the plane who's alive, somehow, and the man in the suit somehow phased through the floor and vanished when he went away. Dude really turned on creative mode. Interestingly, we get a new shift in perspective as the pilot, called Kyle, starts telling his part of the story. He wants to go back home to civilization even though Gene doesn't want to, but Reluctantly, Gene agrees to at least help him get back to it. Kyle even mentions that he's not a bad pilot, which is something we all know considering that he managed to dodge that thing for so long. He was worried about food though, but the story switches back to Gene's perspective where he tells us that food is already stocked up on, so the two of them should be fine for now. Kyle is also packing apparently, as he's got a gun with him with bullets. In good spirit, Gene tells everyone Kyle's stats just in case he dies. Gene's 19, 5'11" and has blue eyes. Gene is kinda being a dick here where he's just worried about the tiger and facing Kyle out when he tells him that he's actually a student with his partner here, while Kyle had to listen to Gene's entire life story. I get it's cute, but come on, at least hear a fellow human out. In their expedition, Gene finds a new Pokemon to add to his brain inventory, like a turtle, a weird plant, and some birds. Weird birds, if you will. We even get to see a past animal, which is a viper that can fly. In the second installment, we learned that this thing can apparently glide and its venom is an anesthetic, I think. The place was starting to get a bit chilly though. In the morning, we learned that the two have went through their supplies and were looking for food, but the female Silasine actually caught something, a weasel or whatever. So far, everything was going somewhat normal, no dragons or flying people, thankfully. But there was one happy picture, which was the head of one of the Troodon. Again, something decapitated this like in the other two parts. The temperature is starting to make some of the animals act weird though, and what I assume are the bear dogs or probably just normal wolves keep on making noise at night. There's also another deep rumbling sound coming from the trees. Gene wants to play Scooby-Doo and go towards it, but Kyle wisely refuses. But in the morning, he of course looks for the source, and it happens to be a giant lizard, hanging from the treetops like the Silas and Ark. Maybe that could be what it's doing, to be honest. When prey goes under, it just launches on. It looks like a monitor lizard, but I don't think it's a megalini because of the shape, but who knows, maybe it could be. Whatever it is, it clearly wants to eat Gene, and it drops to the ground to try to get closer, but Gene just walks away and it loses interest. He then goes on with his nature tangent saying that we should be thanking God for making these animals, and we are thankful, but calm down there, Gene. Thousands are being killed by these things across the world right now. Like the Chicago guy in the very first part, Gene finally experiences some of the migraines from the wormholes, but that's nothing compared to the migraine that's that thing. I don't know what I'm looking at, my mind couldn't fathom it. It looks like something with wings but also has no head, which could just be invisible like the other parts of the body. It apparently just snatched the squirrel and minced it up. But finally, Gene actually runs for his life from something instead of just staring at it in awe. Well, he does kind of stop for a brief moment to take another picture before it vanished. Looks like a frilled lizard with blue lights. I don't know, in the last part some of the weirdest things were some sort of future invertebrate. Turns out I was right, as Gene says that the blue blood is typically seen in cephalopods and this thing was bleeding blue blood, so I think I'd be more scared of what made it bleed, to be honest. A few days or weeks go by and Gene and Kyle get into a little argument because Kyle killed a prehistoric animal for food and Gene goes on with his BS tangents on how we shouldn't eat them because they are beautiful. Like my guy, there's a bunch of them everywhere. This isn't like the English settlers like invading Dodo Island. One is eating an animal for survival. Gene kinda understands at the end but still adds that he'll stick to fruits and nuts. Yeah, you do that. We also finally get to see something normal for a change, being some white-tailed deer, but not for long as Gene soon picks up the flying thing in the air. Or nope, that's not the dragon thing, that's something else. I don't even want to know. As we all know, it wouldn't be a Weird Bird story without some gruesome human death, so here we got it. This time it's a decomposed guy in a WeHo work vehicle. WeHo, I hope, am I saying that right? I'm sorry if I'm not. Anyway, WeHo, by the way, are the company or group that deals with the prehistoric and future creatures all the time, as we found out in the second part. However, some of their actions don't seem to be in the best interest of humanity. The work in the car was apparently called Chuck, that's a basic name. But the two quickly moved from the area since the rotting smell could attract other things to there. And as they were heading back to see a dead Longizguama, yep, that's the name, and gets all sentimental again. It's sad that it died, but damn, calm down. I've noticed that in almost all of the installments this happens. The small animals start to die because the area suddenly turns cold. I don't know if most of their timelines were like this and the temperature is just coming from the wormhole or something. In other news, Kyle apparently apologizes for killing the prehistoric bird and Gene has the audacity to say that his heart was in the right place at least. If I was Kyle, I'd probably try to make it out on my own, but before that, I'd eat a prehistoric animal right in front of Gene. If it could be anything, even a bug, just to piss Gene off, who I'm sure eats chicken back in New York. The Silo did come back though and was seen to be a little idle. Turns out the Scylla is actually called Belle, or maybe I missed the name early on and just forgot. Jean also saw a bear, which is probably one of the strongest things in the forest, and that's a good shot of beating a lot of things from the past that's in the forest currently. As for Cal, turns out he's actually fed Belle a few times before but never told Jean. Hell, I wouldn't either. Damn vegan wannabe. But this makes Jean really think that she's had experience with people before though, which is why she's so friendly. And this kinda makes sense. However, I get some nostalgia with the next creature update Jean drops, or at least I think I do. He says that he sees a crocodile-sized weird otter thing which could be an ambulocetus. Shout out to my Walking with Beasts brethren out there by the way. After Jean basically filled his camera with pictures, him and Cal decided to call it a night, but the dragon thing came back and while running laps around the car, it sounded like screams of the damned. Even though the van's bulletproof, it still would make me hide under the seats or something. Later on, Cal mentioned that some of the WeHo people were heading in their direction.
Not sure if he's noticed, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'll see you at Lone Star.
They sound like a 16-year-old version of me the very first time I went to a house party. Say no to the bottles, kids. It's not cool. Unless it's over 40% and you have some car keys. That's a joke. That's a joke. Do not drink and drive. As a matter of fact, do not drink at all. There, YouTube, you happy? Don't take the video down. It was a joke. Anyway, they basically say that everything's going well and whatever they're doing. As one of them on the phone says that he's going to meet up at Lone Star while complaining about his equipment. I would too if my voice changer sounded like that. Lone Star is a geyser in Yellowstone National Park by the way, so there's something down there that requires WeHo members in our timeline to meet up. The narration then switches to Cal again as he thanks Jean for basically helping him to stay alive, which I guess is valid even though he's kind of a dick. He also lets his partner Jamie know that he's okay, if he's out there, even telling him to take care of the guinea pigs. As it switches back to Jean, I think I understand why he's on his nature arc now. He congratulates Cal on his relationship and then says that he hopes it goes better than his. So he did get his heart broken. For men it's either nature, gym, or getting closer to God after going through a rough breakup. All three if you really lock in. As Jean's telling us that his van will be empty soon when Jean's rescued, he drops another recording of another WeHo person talking about some plane faller.
Oh, yeah, Fedlog Forest. Fedlog Forest. No, we haven't seen any of those. We've been hearing for sure because, like, he's super loud, so, pretty much anywhere you are out here, you can hear that guy yelling and shrieking. Yeah, he's already taken out some of the local fauna. He killed, oh shit, what was it? Was it 2 or 3? I think it was 3. He killed 3 bears. Yeah, he took out a grizzly.
Alright, so the dragon thing turns out to be a Shenlongsaurus, and actually has feathers. On top of that, it's taken out 3 bears. Hell, later on it took on a slingbeak. The battle of the future fauna. The slingbeak actually escaped I think because it was too much. Parrots, more specifically African greys, really are OP in the future. So the Shenlongsaurus turns its attention to the elk instead. It almost killed Cal as well because it turned right towards him and started to advance before getting distracted by another sound, allowing Cal to escape, at least for now. So Cal just decides to stay in the van for a while, which is valid. And during this, Jean just keeps yapping on about the animals, and poor Cal, he just wants to get his partner and see the rest of his family so he could get comfortable. He even sees the wing of a giant insect. Looks like a Meganora wing more than likely, or probably some future bug. Seeing Cal's current state, Jean offers to call Cal's parents, and they do not pick up, but Jamie did. As for the parents, they should be fine considering one's a cop and the other's a lawyer. Jamie, however, is coming up to meet them to collect Cal, so it should work out just fine. It would have been easier if Jean just met up with him halfway, but he doesn't want to do that because he wants to make sure Belle is safe. Which, you know what, is valid at this point. She's kind of like the family dog. But again, he starts his tangents about just how great animals are, etc, etc. In the night they hear some more calls. It scares Cal but obviously fascinates Jean. Something like a damn raptor or something. But then again, it sounded like an electronic thing struggling to load or crashing out. It might be something from the future again. And apparently it was because everyone in the comments were saying that the slingbeak makes that sound. Thought it would have sounded more like a parrot to be honest. Jean says it sounds like a mix of a Shenlongsaurus fighting though. The weird stuff doesn't end there though. Like Hero Brian in his prime, the floating guy comes back and just floats in front of the van for like an hour until floating away. After a while, Gene tells everyone that even a man like him needs rest, and we don't hear back from him for a while. And when he does come back, there's a bunch of new and wonderful things they've seen. The climate's gotten a lot colder, and the bear they've seen just comes closer to the van. This is what Gene's afraid of, instead of the past and future fauna, but I guess that's granted considering how grizzlies are when they're hungry. There's also a deep gut feeling Gene can't shake off. Everything seems fine, but it also feels off in the same way. But Gene's midlife crisis aside, there's a Spinosaurus in the fog. Asset 87. Well, no, not him, an actual Spinosaurus. This one looks really good. That's the biggest theropod I think I've seen in this series so far. Gene does see the presumed Ambulocetus again though. However, the lower jaw looks weirdly thin yet splayed out, so it might be something else or something from the future. Hell, could be from the fossil records that I don't know about. You guys can let me know. It's pretty good at catching fish though. The Troodon do make a reappearance though. At least I think it's them, because Gene says it's the same animals that were giving him some trouble before. This time they weirdly enough behave like actual animals and don't, run Gene down. A female with chicks just escorts them away and a male with a missing wing pops out. But it has what seems to be bandages on him. So like Belle, it seems like these animals are protected or cared for somewhat in the timeline of the Weehawk people. It could be something like us where animals hurt in some reserves are held by a vet and then set back loose into the wild, or maybe they're from a future zoo, who knows. But like animals or birds today, these Troodon change their color to winter colors. Or it could be an age thing where the adults change colors. I mean, even the eye shades changed. Maybe it's only the younger Troodon with the white and brown pattern and black also that behave so aggressive. Who could really say? But Gene decides it's best to, head out since he's in bear and Shenlong country. In his travel, he runs into this thing. I don't know what this even is. Gene thinks it could be octopus. I don't really know, but my mind can't think of anything else other than a big slug. As for Kyle, he makes a joke and says it's a new Udra, a reference that neither Gene or myself got. Alright, quick Google search, and it's apparently something from Monster Hunter, a game I've never got to play as a child, but something I might play in the future since I finally got a PC. The climate gets progressively colder until the entire area is just littered with snow. Gene sees the dozer the dead guy was in before, but it's neatly disassembled and the dude's missing. Guess his folks got him back. As for Belle, well, Gene found some tracks and started following them. However, there were footprints right next to hers. I guess that confirms it. She is human trained. Belle, this time when Gene found her, is much more friendly to him and even lets him pet her, which is a bit strange, although I guess like a stray dog, she got used to him. The pair stumbled across a big ash pile. Something was incinerated. If I had to guess, I'd say it was the dozer guy. That wouldn't be the most concerning thing they saw for the day, however, as Gene stumbles across Jamie's car. Jamie's missing, but the door has been ripped off by something. Being optimistic, Gene hopes he somehow was just lost because there was no blood, but a few meters away was a torn apart deer carcass, so whatever did that to the car wasn't too far away. So Gene heads back and doesn't know if he should tell Kyle or not. Hell, I would. The guilt would eat me alive. During their trek back, he runs into some more of the Weehawk people, including the ghost dude who's been watching him and Kyle for a while. He never acts, just observes. At least Belle caught something to eat though. Was some feathered dinosaur, maybe a different Microraptor or possibly an Archaeopteryx. The Weehawk people were not too far, but Belle seemed comfortable with their presence, so Gene did too to some extent. This is exactly how you get kidnapped. But he tells Kyle about Jamie's car, and being worried, they try to find him but to no avail, since the tracks have disappeared as the snow melted. Belle and Gene see some weird eyes in the snow and they wisely leave it alone. Could have been waiting for prey, something like a flounder that's buried under the ground, where the eyes are literally just visible. Again, Gene goes on about just how great this setting is, something Kyle can't relate to given the situation. Gene remains optimistic though and cheerful as always, eventually running into some weird antelope. Something like a pronghorn, and the thing he thought was an octopus and I thought was a snail was some weird feathered thing. I don't see a head, but maybe it's just well hidden, so if I had to guess, I'd say it was a small relative of the Cerasinosaurus. Eventually he runs into some more things like this pterosaur whose name I forgot, and again, the more of these things Gene sees, the more he seems to get insane, praising them, saying that how they'll outlive us all. And even when he switches to Kyle's perspective, who's a sane person, he says that Gene's behavior is worrying since one of the beautiful creatures almost killed him today. More specifically the Shenlongsaurus that has chased him 7 times, and he's rightfully angry because Gene keeps acting as though these things will just baby them or help them or something. The more Gene talks, the more I kinda start to dislike him. He downplays the fact that an innocent human may be dead and instead tells us that everything that's happening is bigger than any of us, and says that Jamie could still be alive, followed by the words, "poor kids." Okay, boomer. It gets to the point where Kyle just tells him to take a hike, and the prick does just that, saying that he knows the animals could kill him but he just appreciates them. Look buddy, I love nature. In the place where I grew up, the Amazon rainforest was like an hour or two away with a car. So I get it, but he's just overdoing it. I never see someone worried about their partner in the jungle and say, well, even though your partner's probably lost and disemboweled, at least the nature's pretty good. I think Kyle doesn't let him in the van, which leads to Gene again going for another hike. This time I'm on Gene's side because I don't care what I did, it's my van. No one's telling me when I can or can't come in. Anyway, during the walk, Gene runs into a bear who spots him and is coming towards him. But the Shenlong source comes in clutch and saves him, in quotation marks, by fighting and killing the bear. The fight was pretty drawn out and the bear got some good shots in, but eventually the Shenlong won. Eventually, while Belle and Gene were walking back, they find Jamie, or at least what's left of him. The big lizard was feeding on his corpse, and Gene of course says that he finds it fascinating, and justifies it by telling us that he doesn't care what we say because it's like when gazelles watch lions eat their own kind. Bruh. Who was the girl that broke Gene's heart? Was it his ex that took the house, the kids, and half the money? Because he's an actual dick now, not gonna lie. Kyle and Belle are asleep, but he doesn't want to tell Kyle, which is dumb since you'd hear bloody crying for like an hour, but it's better than pointless searches in the future. Even when he slept in it, he can't bring himself to tell Kyle because he doesn't want to mess up his perception of love. I don't think the perception would be messed up. He'd probably just not date anyone for a while, or just date anywhere that doesn't have a forest within like 1,000 miles. Gene also mentions that he knows what it's like to get heartbroken. Yeah, I'm sure you do, but no need to tell us. Come to think of it, his partner could have been dead, which set him on this weird nature arc. Can't believe I forgot that option. He apologizes to us again, but not really. He says that he's really sorry, but still praises nature, but then says that he now sees value in human life. What are you, a sociopath? You didn't see the value before? So what does he try to do to make any things better? Well, he kicks away any tracks of Jamie and says he can find shoes or anything else he can use to give Kyle some hope and reduce the anxiety. Look, I get his heart is in the right place, but that's a bad move, and eventually Kyle will find out, just not with Gene, I guess. Or that's what could have happened if Kyle made it. Belle suddenly appears beside Gene, frantic and terrified, and Gene decides to go back clutching the gun as he hears screaming. The Shenlong source was tearing through the van and getting at Kyle, and Gene could have saved him if he pulled the damn trigger, but no, because it's nature. He instead fired warning shots and watched as the thing took Kyle away as he cried for bloody murder. And what's the excuse? Well, it wasn't that he didn't have a clear shot, I'll tell you that. He looked at it from his perspective, which was that one less human was better than one less of an entire species. Gene even doubles down, saying that him and the animals aren't monsters, yes you are, and that choosing to save one out of billions of Homo sapiens isn't worth it compared to saving the single representative of the Shenlong source. Again, how does he know this is the only one? Maybe it's because I'm sleep deprived and missed a post or audio clip, but I didn't hear or see anything that says that's the only one left. He even asked us if what he did was right. I hope the guilt eats him alive. The Shenlong was supposed to, but weirdly enough, it didn't. Instead, the men in the suit appeared and Belle happily ran over to them and they knew Gene's name and said they had a job for him. And thus, Weird Birds Part 3 comes to an end. Another masterpiece by Akasukas. Really love the change in atmosphere. It's not totally gory like the previous two that are nightmare fuel. There's some gory scenes, yes, like Kyle's death and Jamie's death, but it also shows the main character in a different light. The previous three were loved by us. The Chicago guy and the sibling pair, that is. Whereas Gene could be torn. There's those of us who really dislike him, and another group aka the weirdos who support his choices. This just goes to show just how well written he is. An outdoorsman forced to live in the city, and when he finally gets to go into the wilderness, he decides to stay after seeing creatures from the future and the past. I saw one post from Akasukas where he replied to someone saying part 4 might be the final part, so we'll get to see what happened to the sibling pair and why they picked up Gene. Is it because the weird ghost man noticed his personality and how he cares more about the natural law than humanity to a certain extent? Who could really say? Some of the animals I don't know what they are, but ARK stuff will be in the description, so you guys could go and see for yourselves, and any future projects he's working on. Highly recommend you go over and support their work. Anyway, that's it for now folks, a lot of editing ahead. I'll see you in the next video.